There are these moments in history, moments that really turn on the decision of a single person. A single choice holds an entire nation's future in the balance. This is the story of a moment just like that, and the man who had to make the choice.
If you've ever found yourself lost in a Korean historical drama, with the beautiful palaces and the epic stories of kings and queens, you might have wondered, when did all of this actually start? Where does the story we see on screen really begin? Well, to find that beginning, we have to go back in time. Back past the era of those grand palaces, to a time when a completely different kingdom was nearing its end. A kingdom that had ruled for almost 500 years, Goryeo. Now, the Goryeo Dynasty, which was in power from 918 all the way to 1392, had once been an incredible force. But history is like a tide, and eventually, tides always recede. By the late 14th century, this once great kingdom was, it was fading. Its very foundations, which had been so strong for so long, were starting to crack under some serious pressure, both from the inside and from the world outside. Inside the palace, powerful families were just fighting each other for control, completely paralyzing the government. Corruption was everywhere. And as the powerful got weaker and more selfish, it was the ordinary people who paid the price. And to make matters worse, just beyond their borders, a huge new power was rising in China, the Ming Dynasty, and it was casting a very long shadow. In times like these, when everything feels uncertain, history often seems to look for one person to step forward. And in the final days of Goryeo, that person was a general. His name was Lee Sung-gi. He wasn't a king, not a prince. He was a soldier, a truly brilliant commander who had earned the total respect of his men by defending Goryeo's borders. His loyalty to his kingdom was proven over and over again on the battlefield. But that loyalty was about to face its ultimate test. In 1388, the Goryeo court, in this last-ditch effort to look strong, gave an order. They told Lee Sung-gi to take his entire army north and invade the massive Ming Empire. It was an impossible mission, a suicide mission, really. So for General Yi, this wasn't just a strategic problem, it was a moral one. If he obeyed, he'd be sending thousands of his own soldiers to their deaths, and he would probably drag his entire nation into a war it couldn't possibly win. But if he refused, that was treason. He marched his army to the border as ordered, to a little island in the Yalu River called Wihua. And it was right there, on that small, remote island, that the entire course of Korean history was about to change. Forever. With the river swollen from the rain, making it nearly impossible to cross, and the might of the Ming Empire waiting on the other side, he tried to reason with the court. He laid out 4 clear arguments for why this invasion was a disaster waiting to happen. But his pleas were ignored. And so, he stopped his army. He would not cross that river. In an act that would define a nation's destiny, General Yi turned his entire army around. His new target wasn't the enemy across the river. It was his own corrupt government back in the Goryeo capital. This moment is known as the Wihwado Retreat. But it wasn't a retreat from a fight. It was a pivot, a calculated, decisive coup against his own commanders, signaling the end of an era and the beginning of something entirely new. That march back to the capital wasn't a retreat. It was a march into the future, a future that General Yi himself would now have to build from the ruins of the old kingdom. The Goryeo court was too weak to stand against its greatest general. The kingdom, which had lasted for 474 years, didn't fall to a foreign invader. It crumbled from the inside. 4 years later, in the year 1392, it was all official. General Lee Sung-gi took the throne. with a new title of King Taejo. He was no longer a general of Goryeo. He was now the founder of a brand new dynasty, Joseon.
And the change was total. The Buddhism of Goryeo was replaced with the strict order of Neo-Confucianism. The endless infighting of the powerful families was replaced by a strong centralized government, and a new capital city was built, Hensong, the city we know today as Seoul. The dynasty that was born from that one decision on Wihwa Island would go on to become one of the longest ruling in all of East Asian history. It would shape the very soul of Korea for half a millennium. For more than 500 years, the Joseon Dynasty would survive invasions, it would create incredible art and science, and it would guide the nation right up to the modern era. All of it, every king, every palace, every poem written, was an echo of that single impossible choice made by one man, standing with his army on a remote island. And it leaves you with a question that maybe history can't ever really answer. Is our fate decided by these huge, slow-moving forces that are way beyond our control? Or can the courage of just one person standing at a crossroads truly change the world forever?